Hello, Denise. How are you?
I am wonderful. Hi, Jen.
I love these days so much when I have the opportunity to share within my network how amazing you are and how amazing your book is. So,
Thank you.
I would love for people who just don't know who you are or what your work is about, can we just kind of start really high level to just kind of share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yes, my name's Denise Cooper. I only admit to 25 years of being in HR and in this work because everything else before that is irrelevant. And the work I do is uniquely positioned to help people have better conversations. Change doesn't happen if we can't talk to other people to help support us and be with us around the conversation. And leadership is really the idea that we are influencing people, but we influence people through two things. One, how we show up and the conversations we have with them. And the book and what the work that I do is about helping people learn how to have relevant conversations, particularly if you've been in the marginalized space.
Hmm.
So, and it's not just people of color, indigenous people, the kind of BIPOC
Mhm.
group of individuals. It's not just them, but even white people, because I believe in this work that we're doing in terms of diversity in many of the books, from white fragility down, they really have a subliminal message of we are blaming someone. And
Mm.
change can't happen, inclusion can't happen, belonging can't happen if anybody feels like blame and shame and guilt is what's happening in the space that we're in. And we do it in very subtle ways that we don't always think, it is, because ultimately we all believe we're right. We're addicted to being right.
That we are.
Yes.
And so your book is called Remarkable Leadership Lessons,
Yes.
which obviously I'm biased, but I love the title. And so that also mirrors your business. So, what was the origin of using remarkable? I'm just kind of curious, like what the origin of your company name is even.
Yeah, it's funny because I have marketers who tell me that the only people who can designate themselves as remarkable is your customers because they create the meaning around what that is. But remarkable for me is really, it's remark or repeat.
Mhm.
What is repeatable
Mhm.
about leadership lessons? Because what we've done is we have repeated very bad lessons about leadership. And
Mhm.
so there's a kind of a two meanings to it. It's about remarking or re-saying
Mhm.
better leadership lessons. But the other is what strikes you as remarkable?
Mm.
What strikes you as memorable?
Yeah. And I think so often we have such bad leaders in general that, when
Yes,
someone is remarkable, they're worth remarking about. They're worth
yes,
marking about. Yes, talking
yes,
about. Yes, that
yes,
makes absolute perfect sense.
yes.
So you've been in business for at least 25 years that you're going to
Admit to.
college. Yep. And so how long has the idea of writing a book and publishing a book been swirling in your head?
Well, I want to tell you and your audience that I'm probably not the archetype on this because I actually didn't want to write a book. I was stuck with I didn't believe that my words the way I was worth remarking about.
Mhm.
But I'm a speaker and I am a trainer. And after my sessions, progressively, people would just come up and say, "Do you have a book? Have you written this down? Do you have a blog?" And I'm kind of like, "No, no, 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 not really." And so as my business started to evolve into something that is very sustainable, um, I started listening and trying to figure out why are people asking me about books. So I did a bunch of homework on that, and then one day I went to a workshop, and the folks had told me, "Oh, you're probably only going to get about 30 people to show up," and so I was prepared for 50. I always prepare a little bit more,
Mhm.
and literally 115 people showed up. That was all the room had capacity for. The fire marshals had already been to this event because they'd had some calls about it. And we estimate another 70 people wanted to get in and couldn't get in.
Wow.
And that was kind of the, okay, clearly your message is getting out. And again, do you have a book? Do you have a book? Do you have a book? And so I'm a bit spiritual in nature. And I just said, Lord, if you want me to have a book, you got to send me some God winks. And my clients all know about the God winks because I teach them how to make God winks happen. And the right people just showed up.
Mm.
And they were people who, just knowing me, believed in me.
Mm-hmm.
And helped me craft the right message, and made it so that it was, from my perspective, it was almost effortless, like you and your team and all the people that you connected me with to help me write the book.
Mm. What's interesting is that I think a lot of times people assume that they're an outlier or that people have this burning passion that they have to get their book written, if it takes it, to their last breath. But so often it's actually common to hear what you just said, where sometimes it's like a higher power, a greater force, something that is pulling you like a magnet to do that thing.
Absolutely. That's
And
exactly it.
and I love that that's kind of how you're framing it, and how all of the things kind of just showed up to say like, all right, and now you do this, and this person's going to do this for you, and how, you just kind of let the universe kind of help create your path, which is so beautiful. Because I think a lot of times people reject that kind of outside influencer or influence that they can't see. And I love that you kind of just went with it, because it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, that the process, once you made that commitment to do this, somewhat kind of flowed, maybe not effortlessly, but it did kind of flow in a way that didn't feel super bumpy or rocky.
Yeah. And the way I tell people is that, when you're in alignment with your values and what your mission is supposed to be, the effort doesn't come from the process of becoming. The effort comes because of the resistance we put in place to become. Because every level, new devil. Every level, you have to re-skill, rethink, change your mindset. That's a popular word today. Change your mindset and allow the next gift, God wink, to show up in your life. And when you can manage your own personal resistance, the effort to do something goes down.
So good. And it's such an easy framing for people to understand what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so
It is also the biggest impediment to leadership, and leadership not from the role, although the role has something to do with it, but each of us is an influencer. Each of us influences people every single day to get what we want to give to other people. And every relationship gives us something. But the hard part is that we have been told time after time after time that you have to be scheming, you have to work hard at it, you have to be the expert in the room, and that's not true.
Yeah, and which kind of goes a little bit along the lines of just the kind of the servant leadership. Yeah, which I think sometimes people take to another extreme. Or leadership, obviously this is your expertise. Leadership is tricky. I think it's tricky for a lot of people. For me personally, I like to just say, like, I am who I am. What you see is what you get, regardless of how you encounter me. Whether we're here now, whether we're chatting elsewhere, whether, we ran into each other taking our garbages down as neighbors. Like, because to me, like, the more aligned you are, the easier it is.
Absolutely.
It's just so much easier, because then you don't have all of the, which kind of talks a little bit about just different ways in which you can be discriminated against. You have the very obvious diversities. There's more, hidden diversities that people have. And so, if you don't have to hide who you are, you just show up and be who you are,
right,
it's going to make you a more effective leader, and it's going to help the people that you're leading also be more effective.
Absolutely. Because the more we're in alignment with what we believe and we live from our beliefs, what you do is we role model to people how to be with us. So if and people are going to like you for all kinds of reasons, right? That old saying of like you for the right reasons, wrong reasons, no reasons, all reasons, kind of philosophy. But the more we're in alignment with what we believe, the more the message that we're leading with is, you can trust me. when you try to be different people with different groups of people, then what it sends off is a signal of distrust. And unfortunately, our brain chooses to say trust, no trust first.
Yeah.
And so if you're wobbling on who you need to be to show up, then I'm going to see that as distrustful. I
Yeah.
may not know it consciously, but I will know that internally, and I will always be a little sideways thinking about you.
And I find that that's so interesting because the idea of what we're saying in terms of like trust or not trust, it actually translates into the book itself.
Yes.
Because so often a reader can't articulate or know exactly what it is that doesn't feel right about a book that they've picked up. But it's an immediate gut decision. Everyone says don't judge a book by its cover, but unfortunately people judge books by their cover or by what the inside looks like. And so it's always interesting that they might not just be able to communicate like, hey, I don't like this because the font's too big or the spacing's off or whatever it is, but they just immediately make that gut reaction of like, I don't trust this book. Like there's something about it I don't like. And then that obviously kind of like impacts you in the long run too, especially if the book is there to continue to build trust with new audiences.
Right. That's exactly right. And, it's also why I was so resistant about writing the book, because I wanted the book to be authentic, but I also wanted it to be something that said something that was meaningful and moving to people. I understand how people are now. And, most of us don't have time to read. That's why podcasts are, probably one of the fastest growing mediums now. So I wanted the book in each of the chapters is almost a self-contained chapter. You can choose to read 5 minutes and walk away with the lessons and the blessing from the book itself, or you can choose to read a couple chapters. And all of them are just individual stories. I love that one of the readers, and we have the quote on the book is, it's like chicken soup for the soul, for the business soul.
Yeah.
So it helps us be in the workspace. It helps us be good leaders. It helps us lead others well and to learn how to treat people with humanity so that we are increasing in diversity, inclusion, and belonging.
And I think what's interesting is that, and of course, again, I'm biased because of working with you, but we also have to think about our readers and what their learning preferences are. And so often that's not the case. And so with what you just said with regards to your book, it's designed in a way that people can kind of pick it up, read a little bit, put it down, and it's physically designed that way.
Yes.
Because you're thinking about the busy leader that may be kind of squeezing in reading this among many other activities that they might be doing, versus a lot of times, and again, this kind of goes to that like knee-jerk reaction the reader potentially makes, is that they might pick up a book and be like, this is way too big, this is overwhelming, and then just put it down. But when it's designed right and it's designed for who your people are, then you have that experience. And I'm optimistic that you will start to get that feedback, because your book just launched, which is so exciting.
I know.
It's like, now's the time that it's like, okay, now it's birthed, it's into the world. Now we wait and hear what people have to say about it, which is really exciting. But how are you feeling about on that front? Like at this moment, like how are you feeling about the onslaught of feedback that will be coming to you?
It's already started. So, because as we did, you guys are so good. We planned it for one day. Amazon beat us to that day. So someone already had bought it and had listed a review, 5-star review on it. So I was like, oh my God, I can't believe that. And since it's been out, 10 days or thereabouts now, people have started reading it, and it is generating such a different conversation than the one that we typically have, and particularly in the community of people who are being marginalized. Because now they see a way in which they, through their everyday lives, can have an impact on the conversations and the people around them, so that they are no longer feeling marginalized or being marginalized.
Yeah.
They begin to understand the difference between the person and the system. So, if you're the person who's being marginalized, sometimes it's really hard to see the difference between the person, my boss or my coworkers, versus the system, which is run by HR and this kind of conglomeration in the workplace. And now we can start seeing how the structure impacts us individually and then how individually we impact each other. And
Mhm.
it's all done through real life. And although the stories themselves are kind of an amalgamation of different clients, the premise of each story is one that is repeatable for everyone.
Mhm. And so if you were to be speaking directly to the person who needs your book right now, what does that person look like? Like what type of job do they have potentially? Like who is that ideal, both the ideal reader for you, but also kind of that ideal client that you might have?
So it's kind of built for a couple people. One, those are people who are empowered to be a leader, so director level and above. And it talks to them about what are the challenges of implementing an idea, implementing a strategy, getting a group of people together so that they have one common purpose and they're all working towards that without you efforting to manage them. So
Mhm.
getting them to do their job, being clear about what they need to do and that kind of thing. The other is for people who might have bosses who are less than perfect or excellent, maybe even excellent. We have a story in there about a Taming Attila. And there are a couple other Taming Attila-like stories that we've named them differently, but
Mhm.
it's really about this is a person who's been poorly trained or not trained at all, picked up a bunch of really bad habits, and those habits are causing you grief.
Mhm.
And so, how can you have those kinds of conversations? How can you assess the situation such that you're no longer having those kinds of experiences with this particular person?
I love that so much because it's managing up and down.
Yes.
Yeah. And so often, again, this is your expertise, not mine, but so often people don't even think that they can manage up.
Yes.
So it's great that your book is kind of maybe an entry point for someone who does have that boss who is not perfect, as you said. And it's kind of a nice subtle opportunity to gift them something that might, benefit everybody around them.
Yes. And you can do it from two ways. Obviously, you can give them a copy of the book, which sends a really subtle message. But the problem with that is that they may miss the message.
Mm.
Um, and the other is that you can actually use it, and there's tools and questions that you can ask yourself that will help you align the conversation, have that conversation with the boss or with a colleague or coworker who is less than best, not being their best.
Mm. Yeah. That's just awesome. I love when books lend themselves to what we're talking about, where it's just a very strong entry point for somebody to really kind of, swoop in and really start to immerse themselves in your work. So in that vein, I know you also have a podcast. Can
Yes.
you tell us all a little bit about your podcast?
Podcast is called Closing the Gap with Denise Cooper. It is much like this. It's people who I have met that are trying to push the idea of how can we be better at leading others, at influencing other individuals. And we talk on the individual level, we talk about the structural level, but it's also from a personal. So because one of the biggest questions, two questions that I get repeatedly is, first of all, where do you learn it?
Mhm.
Or how did you learn it? And so they talk about how they learn to be better leaders. And the other is how do you fail forward?
Mm.
We talk a lot about, fail fast, fail forward in the business world, but that's easier to say because once you get that gut punch that takes your wind away, because now you are, oh my God, it didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. And you want to just go hide. Uh, you know, and then you spend days going, oh, what could I have done? And how did they think of me? And what did I think? And da, 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 da. How do you get back into being your confident self, your able self that doesn't hold on to that failure, but actually takes what happened and move it to the next step? Because one of the things the book comes across with is success doesn't happen in an instant,
Mm-mm.
although it looks like an instant. It's through a series of conversations. That's why the second tagline is, changing results one conversation at a time. It's thinking about how do I have these conversations where I take people from resistance to acceptance.
Mhm. Mhm. I was just talking to somebody this morning, and we were talking about how so underlooked children are for this exact reason, where, children share an experience with either another child or an adult, or there's some interaction between two children, an adult kind of sees it, and how even children as young as 4 have their own spheres of influence, and how kind of fascinating that is. So it's interesting that this is now my repeating thing for the day. that I'm like, I'm listening, universe. I hear you. That's so good. And how long has your podcast been around?
I do them in series of like 10-ish. And so this is my 3rd season.
Nice.
And then we just kind of repeat while I try to find, because it's funny finding individuals who really can come from that personal space instead of my book space or my speaking space or my leadership, face or persona, but really come from that personal space and see, well, how did I overcome this? How did I learn this? What would I tell someone? And then be able to tell a decent story of, well, this is kind of what the story was. Here's how I had to learn to pivot. Here's how I came back into it and then back out. It's a bit more difficult because, we're in the media world now. And so everybody's got a story, but I want my readers to really connect emotionally and intellectually at some level with the people that I'm talking to. And so being able to talk about those real stories has been an important lesson for both me as well as the people who get on the podcast. So we're up to episode, I believe, 30, I think posted is 31. I have 4 more weeks that are popping out. They generally come out on Thursday. New episodes do that. People can find them on LinkedIn under me, Denise J. Cooper. And then you just click on it or you can subscribe. And I'd love to be able to hear from you if you hear something that connects with you.
Yeah, I love that. And I love what you have going on, because you have this beautiful blend of being a consultant, a trainer, a podcaster, an author, a speaker. So it's nice when everything works together in some kind of synergy, which is always easier said than done. Yes. So it's kind of beautiful that that's happening. How are you feeling now that we're, still in COVID and will be for who knows how long, in terms of not having that opportunity to be like speaking like on a stage physically versus like doing virtual events? Are you kind of missing that physical interactions with folks? I know I am. Just kind of curious.
Yeah, it's funny. So first of all, people are always very shocked to find out that I'm very much an introvert and a homebody. And it takes an awful lot for me to do the speaking engagements, but they seem to love them. And the other thing I think people are surprised at is I've been coaching virtually since I started this business back in 2007. And so I rarely, in fact, 90+% of my clients, I never actually meet face to face. It's all done via the phone and now Zoom, etc. So when we moved into this space, I was already in the virtual world. I was doing Zoom. All I did was now take the training and the coaching that I was doing for individuals, and now I've launched it as speaker platform. So, last month I finished for an entire company. It was 97 people all online. We did a 6-month training around emotional intelligence and how to create belonging and inclusion, not under the game of belonging and inclusion, but really we're now not connected physically. How do we get connected in such a way that we do feel like communication is including us, that we're being seen, that we actually belong here and you want us to be here, as well as how do we manage all of the things that are happening, from the baby crying to the children who need virtual training, and in the middle of your meeting, they get up and go, "Mommy, it went out. Daddy, it's not working." And then the dog who runs across and knocks everything out, right?
Yeah, it's interesting, that's for sure.
But I also think, Jen, this is, we've been talking about this. One of the things I am is a futurist, so I've been watching, all the evolution of this, and we've known this was going to come. And it always amazes me how no matter how many times we tell people this was coming, we are absolutely surprised when it gets here. Yeah. It's like Christmas morning. We know Christmas is coming, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's just that mismatch of expectations.
Yeah.
And so, like, even at the beginning of COVID, I had conversations with friends, and my birthday is the end of June. And I was saying, like, oh yeah, we'll still be in this in the end of June. And I had a couple of friends who thought I was the crazy person by assuming that we would be in this for a while. So I have already resigned that we were going to be in this until February of 2022. And I'm perfectly okay with that. So if it's before then, great. If it's after then I'm going to have a problem, because then my expectation's going to be off. But it's easier to plan much further ahead
Yeah.
and just know, like, okay, like if something happens before then, great. That's just a bonus. But, I just feel bad seeing people having like meltdown after meltdown. It's like, well, just readjust your expectations and you could have avoided at least some of this. But,
Yeah. And or at least admit and listen to, we'd like to think that experts are not perfect or right or whatever, but too many said that if it wasn't from a COVID, and a COVID initiative or some kind of disease initiative, work really did need to evolve to much higher level work. We have artificial intelligence, we have robotics, we have programs now, we have software programs, algorithms, etc., that can do a lot of lower level work.
Mm-hmm.
And people weren't paying attention to that. I was, just before we got on here, I got a panic phone call from someone whose boss is the chief financial officer for a relatively small company. They have 250 people at their place, but they're connected to a network of over 2,000 independent companies. And they still want to do everything in a spreadsheet and Excel. Mm-hmm. And they purchased I think it was ADP software, which will do everything for them. Mm-hmm. They just have to program it.
Yeah.
But the boss is still very resistant to get off of the Excel spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. And it's now, because everybody's not there, it means you're going to, when something goes wrong in the HR world, you're getting 50, 60 emails and phone calls. Mm-hmm. So you've now tripled your workload.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I feel like now's a good time of reckoning in terms of outdated ways of doing things and the future of how things are going to be done. And it's just a matter of how adaptable are we to what those changes are. Are we going to go with the flow, or are we going to kick and scream the whole way?
Yeah.
Going with the flow is certainly better.
And that's about growth, mm-hmm. And so, that's the, with people like you and the other people who helped me with the book, that's what was really nice about working with you guys. Because the way your team works, the way your team interacts with me or interacted with me, and I can't believe that, I'm a firm believer, how you do anything is how you do everything. The way you interacted with me was from a place of, hey, you don't need to know all the details down, but we will give them to you in bite-sized chunks that you can consume them at the right time. And if you just release and follow the footprints, the God winks along the way, then this will be a great experience for you. And that was the best gift that you could have given me. And I'm sure that everyone who works with you and the people you pick to work with you, they all know it, because I haven't met anyone. So kudos to you in vetting.
That's very kind of you to say. And what I always tell people to just, and I always preface it with, you're going to hate that I'm going to say this, but please just trust the process. Mm-hmm. And that is so difficult for so many people to do. And especially in something like this, where it's like a baby is being birthed. There's so many kind of commonalities between childbirth and a book. So like, you just kind of have to trust that everything is going to work out the way it is. And if you have the right team around you, then you're going to be in good shape. And I think when things suffer is when people don't have the right team around them. And that's when there's, a lack of, we were talking a little bit before, but like that lack of quality matching the person who put that book out. And that can be really tragic for people's, the longevity of their businesses, because you always want to be putting your best foot forward, or like you were saying, like how you do one thing is how you do everything. That is 100% who I am, almost to a not a great degree. like, once I get into things, I'm all in. Doesn't matter if it's yard work or if it's like getting something done. But yeah, it's one of those interesting things. Just have a solid team around you and you can do anything, which, in your book, is a perfect way to help kind of enhance that team that's already there and just make them more solid and more, maybe resilient, or all of the things that you teach.
So when this comes out as a recording, I want everyone to note exactly what Jen said, because if you're asking the question, what is the mark of a good leader? That is the mark of a good leader. It is someone who vets their people well and allows and puts together a process that is repeatable and implementable, and then gets out of the way and lets their people do what they need to do. And they all effortlessly have one goal in mind, and that is follow the process, assure the person like me, the writer, that things are going to go well. And what happens is the result that you desire is the result that you get.
Yeah. That is so beautifully said. I have enjoyed this conversation so much today. And I'm so happy. Like I said at the start of this, I'm just so overjoyed when we're at the day where it's like, now we can have this conversation from all the back end stuff, all the slog that goes into getting this done. It's like today it is the celebration day. The launch is the celebration. So for those who are interested in purchasing a copy of your book, they can do so wherever books are sold. It's Remarkable Leadership Lessons by Denise Cooper. Wherever they want to buy books, they're welcome to. But can you please tell people how to get in touch with you personally, should they want to explore things a little bit further?
Yes. The fastest and the easiest is actually LinkedIn. And so you'll go to LinkedIn, www.linkedin.in/Denise Cooper. And my profile will pop up. And that's probably the easiest way to get me, send me a message. If you don't do it that way, then please feel free to go to my website, which is www.remarkableleadershiplessons.com. And there's a contact sheet there, and you can send me a message that way. I'm on Facebook and Instagram under Remarkable Leadership Lessons or Coach D Cooper. All the ways you can think of getting hold of me, including sending a note to Jen, and she will be happy to pass it on because she has a team of people who already have done that for me.
You bet. I'm happy to field any inquiries that are helpful for you. And then your podcast, let's not forget the podcast.
Oh, yes. You can get them at Apple and Google Play, etc. It's Closing the Gap with Denise Cooper. If you put that in, then it will pop up, or you can go to my website. And you can click on it there, and you can listen to past recordings of it. And it's hosted by the C-Suite Network, which is the largest network dedicated to the growth of leaders around the world. And so if you put in C-Suite Network and then Denise, Closing the Gap with Denise Cooper, my profile will pick up, and you will also see my podcast there.
Beautiful. You are all in all of the places that are
everywhere. Anybody who'll listen. and that's part of the deal, because until people stop listening to the old stuff that doesn't work, then you have no room for trying the new stuff that does work.
That is such a beautiful way to end it, because there's so much truth in such a small sentence. Oh, I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again very